All right, guys, welcome back to the MVM Show. I'm Titus, and I'm joined today by Kevin and also Mark Hennely. He's been on here one other time, actually, all three of us together. And we got a lot of good information for Californians, if you're a California duck hunter, and then we'll talk about some other stuff that involves everybody from wherever you're listening to this moment. So we appreciate everybody that's tuning in, and lots of downloads coming in. Guys are more people, so we appreciate all the new people that are listening to the podcast. And again, check out the MVM Show podcast group page on Facebook. If you're into Facebook and you like getting in those groups, a lot of new people have joined. I think like 350 since last week. So a lot of people are joining it and just putting up pictures and interacting with everybody. So it's been pretty cool. So you can check that out. But we're gonna get into, I believe, first, Mark. We're gonna get into, and by the way, thanks for coming on again. But we're gonna get into the water. The flooding up first. We're going to talk about that. So do you want to go ahead and give us what you got for what's going on with the flooding up the refuges and stuff?
Yeah, just generally speaking, of course, with the drought, that's really impacting the fall flood up on a lot of the public areas up and down the state. So I would expect, if you're a public land hunter, there's going to be significant reductions in hunter quotas in a lot of areas, and even some closures, unfortunately, on some refuges for a time, just because of the water situation that's so dire this year. But I would say if you're able to find a place to hunt, if you're lucky enough to get drawn or willing to sit in the sweat line for hours on end, and you get on, the hunting early should actually be pretty good, because there's going to be so little wetland habitat out on the landscape. These birds are going to be concentrated on areas where you do have water. So in that sense, the hunting, particularly the first week or two, I think should be pretty good.
Okay.
I don't know about you guys, but personally, I like on the opener, if I get onto a public area, to check out the Fish and Game and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service flood up maps, and determine when those areas, each pond was flooded up, and try to focus on the ponds that were flooded, say in August or September, early flooded ponds. Those seem to typically hold a lot more birds than say stuff that was flooded up a week or two earlier, prior to the opener. And especially the mallards seem to be in there pretty good, in that early water. So it's just one thing you can do to try to maximize your chance for success.
That's something actually I've never even said. I knew that, but you forget what you know that maybe other people don't know. So that's really actually a good point that I've never even said on here or our videos. Check the flood maps. That's a great tip. I appreciate you bringing that up, because I never even thought to tell people about that. The earlier the flooding, the more birds have been in there and been used to it and just have that habit of going back in there.
Hashtag first water.
There you go. And I think that, Titus, that particularly true for your area down there in the grasslands. Places like Los Banos and Volta do a lot of early flooding. And if you're able to find out which ones got the first water, you'll have a pretty good opportunity on mallards over there. So particularly that area, that rule applies. So, because of the drought and the access being difficult, but the hunting can be good late. There is also the hunting also with the reduced amount of flooded habitat can be good, particularly late in the season. What we saw in 2014 and 15, that drought, it produced actually some of the best hunting on public areas that we've ever had. If you guys remember, and you can go on Fish and Game's website to see this stuff, the average in 2014 and 15, those 2 years, was 2.5 and 2.6. In most years, we're lucky if we can shoot a two-bird average. So it jumped up, that amount. And, I just remember those years as being phenomenal hunting, particularly like the last week or two of the season when there just wasn't a lot of other habitat available. I think the difference, though, this year is, we don't have a lot of production coming out, waterfowl production out of the prairie pothole region or parts of Canada. In 2014 and 15, those areas were wet. So that may make it a little bit harder on us this year. Not only are we having problems producing our own ducks here in California, but a lot of the areas north just don't or didn't have very good production. Now, the exception for that, I heard up in northern Canada, where a lot of the green-winged teal nest, those areas did pretty good. So if you're a grasslands hunter, I definitely expect the teal to be coming down in good numbers again this year. And then, as you guys know, I mean, with the one sprig limit, which is so frustrating, but there's still enough sprig out there, even though they may take a little hit on their population, that most people, if they're hunting flooded rice or an open water area, they should be able to get their bull sprig no problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there's a lot of similarities with that 2014 and 15, and I think at least early in the season, it'll probably play out in a similar range. So that means, again, if you are able to get on a refuge, you should be looking at some good hunting.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of wondering that because of the drought and, like you said, the Prairie Pajal region. I mean, we already know that, like you said, you shoot your one Drake Pintail, and there's just like after that, it's like 1,000 of them come in there. I mean, do you think we're probably not even going to notice any difference, right? I mean, we're still going to see a ton of Pintails, right?
Oh, yeah. No, there's still, I mean, we winter 60% of the entire continental population of pintail. That's
Really?
how many of, that's the proportion of birds that come into Sacramento Valley, San Joaquin Valley to winter. So we just, it's a blessing, but it's also a curse because, we're limited to that one bird. But the good thing is if you do have habitat that's conducive to that species, I mean, you should have no problem getting your bird every time out.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Hey, Mark, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
We were drawing some parallels from 14 and 15. Like you said, the years with the drought in 14 and 15, right? Now, were the refuge quotas reduced as well back in 14 and 15 like they will be this year?
Yep.
Okay.
I would say there's a lot of similarities there. So, yeah, it's the same thing. Just back then it was significantly reduced quotas on, many of the areas up and down the state. And, we're also, I think another difference, though, is this year there's not going to be much flooded rice either. So in a typical year, we have about, this is for Sac Valley, of course, we have about 250,000 acres of flooded rice. This year, we're going to be lucky if we even have 100,000 acres. So that's going to even further, concentrate those birds on the managed wetlands that do have water. So again, from a hunting standpoint, that's going to be a good thing. People will be able to reap the rewards of that.
If you can get in.
If you can get in. Yep.
Yeah. And that, it's funny, we kind of looked at each other and nodded because when you said about how 14 and 15 were good for the refuges, because that's what I was telling Kevin, and he's like, yeah, and, I never thought of that before, but it's congregating those birds. But again, like you said, then you're busy with a bazillion hunters. So,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know, you can get out on your Wednesdays and not be too bad. It's just the Saturdays and Sundays that get pretty backed up, I think. It feels like.
Yeah.
People staying out
It's
longer.
It's doable, though.
Yeah, it's kind of the norm.
Yeah, it really is in California.
Yeah.
But
I think one of the things most hunters realize too is no matter what the water year is, that first week of hunting on the refuges, particularly the first 3 hunting days, are really good.
Yeah.
And so if you're gonna hunt and take the time to do it, take advantage of those days if you can, because that's pretty much a guarantee of above average hunting as opposed to the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes you'll even get that second Saturday will be pretty good too. I mean, it seems to me like it takes the birds a few days to get used to all the shooting before they settle into the sanctuary areas. So,
Yeah.
So do you have any more as far as that goes, or do you want to go into like the water as far as you talked about, you didn't really go in detail about the flood ups, right? Because you said about kind of how you can use that to your advantage, but I mean, did you want to talk about the refuges
Yeah, what I can do is go through each region and try to let you guys know what I'm hearing in terms of how each refuge is looking with their flood up and hunter quotas.
Okay.
So if you want, I'll start up in the Northeast zone.
Okay.
As you all know, Lower Klamath continues to have, really serious water problems. And that's been one of the most vexing, difficult, political situations I've ever dealt with on any issue. I've been doing, my work at CWA for 20 years, and the Klamath issue is probably the most difficult one I've ever had to deal with. So we're working on it, and eventually, hopefully, it'll be worked out to where the refuge gets more water and we maintain that, waterfowl population, that hunting opportunity there, but it's going to take some time. Right now, what we're doing is we're trying to acquire permanent water rights for the refuge. This would be a sale of water from a willing landowner to send their water to the refuge, and it would be in perpetuity. So once you get a hold of that water right, you have it forever, and you can call on it at any time during the year. So it really does help to make sure that you have a reliable supply year in and year out. The one we're working on right now is a transfer of water to Unit 2. So there's only, if you were to go out and look at Lower Klamath right now, there's only one unit that has any water on it. There should be, 6 or 7, but Unit 2 near the highway, state line highway, that's the big sanctuary unit. It does have some water in it, and we're trying to make sure that water is maintained. And we've heard from the Department of Oregon Department of Water Resources that they approved the transfer. We're just now waiting for the Bureau of Reclamation to turn on the head gates and release that water into the refuge. So hopefully that'll be forthcoming here in the next couple of days.
Oh, okay. Okay, is that the 3,700
acre feet water?
Acre feet?
Correct.
Oh, cool. Because I thought we were talking, Kevin, you didn't know if it was going to even be soon, right?
No. Well, I wanted to ask you, Mark, from the emails, it looked like it was kind of imminent, right? Getting this water.
Is.
Yeah.
I expect we're going to get this resolved in the next day or two.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so and go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Can you paint us a picture, Mark, of how, like, in terms of look on Unit 2, what that 3,700 acre feet of water would look like?
That's good.
Yeah. So Unit 2 is definitely a big unit. But the good thing is, because there was water in it earlier, it's all charged up. So the water we do put in there, it's not going to sink into the ground. It's going to raise that water level up pretty quick. Given that, we've had to wait this long for our transfer to go through, we're not getting the full benefit of it. We're not getting as much water as we originally were supposed to get. But I still think it'll be enough to get that unit back up. It should be, then more attractive to fall migrators. We're certainly going to save a lot of waterfowl broods and molting birds that were sitting in there too, that would have otherwise been stranded and died or picked off, by predators. There should be good water then in there, hopefully for the next couple months. And then, at that, depending on how the temperatures go and everything else, it would be good if we could get an extra shot of water to supplement that. But, that's so far down the line. I just don't know what the Bureau of Reclamation is going to be able to do in terms of providing more water to that unit. But at least it looks like we are going to get this water in the short term.
Okay, cool. What's usually what's it take to fill up Unit 2? Do you know? What acre feet? Yeah.
So, I don't have the size of that unit. I know the units up there are huge. I mean, there's some that I believe are over 1,000 acres. They're that large. What it generally is in terms of water is for every 3 acre feet of water that you deliver to a unit, you flood up 1 acre, because there's that much loss due to, the ground being dry and just the conveyance losses along the way. Now, again, the good thing is that wetland is currently charged with water. And so I think we're going to get more bang for our buck in there when we deliver this water in. So hopefully it'll be able to, if it doesn't fill it entirely, it should be able to fill it certainly more than like 50% full,
Okay.
which it's such a large unit that's
It
going to
is.
provide a lot of surface acreage, surface area for the birds to use.
And that's for lower Klamath.
Klamath, yes.
Okay, now
Yeah.
how long? Just out of curiosity, how long will that take to do that? To get all that water out? How many days?
Yeah, it's probably will take, my guess would be a couple weeks to
Okay.
get all that water in there.
Okay.
So it won't happen overnight.
Right. I'm just curious how long you guys kind of stretch that out, if there's a system there, or if it just constantly runs day and night.
It's going to go over day and night.
Day and night, huh?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
So then in terms of, the opportunity at Lower Klamath, of course, that unit's in the closed zone. There really is not going to be any flooded habitat opportunity for the season. But as you guys all know, they do have a lot of grain fields over there that once they're harvested, they'll open up for hunting. So that'll be the focus of the hunting program for Lower Klamath this year. Will be on those dry harvested grain fields, which frankly can shoot really good. I know a lot of people are not set up for field hunting. It takes a lot of equipment and effort, but for those that are, the hunting could be pretty good over there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
At least it provides some opportunity. That's good. We haven't had
Yep.
that in a few years.
Yep.
Okay.
So then moving over to Tule Lake, I think most people are aware that Sump 1A is dry. It was drawn down this year for maintenance purposes. What they're trying to do there is increase the water holding capacity of the sump and also encourage waterfowl food plants. It's never been dried out completely, so this is kind of a first for that wetland.
Mm-hmm.
But that tells me too that it's long overdue. Something that really probably should have been done a long time ago, but it's good that they finally got around to it.
Yeah.
So that normally is a big hunting unit, and it's probably going to remain dry and not be available for hunting this year. So that leaves, of course, Sump 1B, which is the smaller sump. That currently has a lot of water in it, and they are continuing to fill it up. I think it's risen about 0.7 of a foot in the last couple weeks. So they've been able to get that water level up. That's going to help prevent the botulism, maybe not prevent it, but reduce any kind of outbreak that might occur though there.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of a botulism outbreak on Sump 1B this year, so that's good. So we may actually be able to avoid that entirely. But anyway, that unit's going to be looking good, but because it's the only flooded unit over there, I think they're going to keep that closed, and that will not be open for hunting, at least early in the season. There will, like Lower Klamath, be dry, field hunting opportunities. But that's what I would look for the opener. Is you're probably going to have to hunt a dry field if you want to hunt Tule Lake.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what I don't know if they've officially came out and said that, but I think that was the consensus. You can come up there, first come, first served for fields.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, like you said, we haven't heard about a botulism outbreak. That's good news.
Yeah, that's really good news.
Because a lot of those birds that would be in there are going to be birds that bred in other parts of California, essentially our local mallards. And, last year, of course, many of them bred down here in the valley and then just went up to Klamath to die from disease.
Right.
So if we can avoid that this year, that should help our local mallard population out quite a bit.
Yep. That's what we want to hear.
That's the plan.
Yep.
Okay.
So then going over to Modoc, over there on the east side, that had a lot of good water early, and then they had to unfortunately shut it off, the river that they were getting water from. They got a curtailment order, so they couldn't get water out of the river. So most of the, if not all of the hunt area went dry, and I think a part of the sanctuary as well. The good thing is they're starting to reflood there, and they're probably still looking at a delayed opener with a reduced quota, but I think they will open up for hunting at some point in October. So that'll be good.
Okay. And they'll just start off with the guys who got drawn. They'll just be pushed back.
Luckily, me and my kids were one of those people.
There you go.
We're really wanting to see that one open up. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a pretty good shoot. but we'll see.
Yeah. Okay.
And then some of the, the state areas up there, it's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, we have places like Shasta Valley. It looks like that's going to be closed entirely for the season. Trout Lake is the only water right now on that property. And it's just that place has got severe water restrictions right now. So I wouldn't expect any early hunting there. Butte Valley, which is kind of nearby, did get some funding to do some groundwater pumping. So they should have quite a few wetland units open for waterfowl hunting for the opener. So that's a one bright spot up in that neck of the woods. Ash Creek, that has a pretty good ability to flood up now, the way they kind of manage their ponds. So that should have definitely some water, probably a little bit reduced hunter quota from last year, but it will certainly be open for hunting for the opener.
Okay.
Yep. At least that's the latest I've heard. So, and then places like Willow Creek and Honey Lake, it looks like it'll be somewhat of a more limited flood up than last year. So you're probably looking at reduced hunter quotas there, but I do believe those areas will be open.
Okay.
Okay.
Noted.
And then I know a lot of people also hunt some of the reservoirs up there, and particularly in Plumas County, like Lake Almanor and then Walker Lake, which is over in Lassen. Those reservoirs are really low. And of course, we had that Dixie fire go right through that area.
Yep.
So I haven't gone out and looked at it yet, but my guess is with the fires, the low water, and then the Forest Service closures around that area, it may be pretty difficult to get in there to hunt. So I would expect the opportunities there to be not as good as they've been in previous years.
Yeah. Where are they going to go now, those hunters, right?
I know.
Impact these other areas.
Well, that's the whole thing with this. The more you take some of these refuges and hunting areas off the table,
right,
it's going to force people to other areas and create the crowding issues. And, then we're just going to have a lot of people kicking rocks in the parking lot, which I know is frustrating. But again, what are you going to do? It's a drought year. These things happen. We just all have to roll with it.
Yeah. That's kind of the theme here in California. You got to roll with it.
Yeah. Got to be adaptable.
Yep.
And, if your favorite refuge isn't flooded up, find another place.
Yep.
And maybe it's an opportunity for you to learn a new area. And that's always a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
You got to keep learning as you do this. As much as we've all been doing this for so long, I don't think any of us have it fully figured out.
No.
So
yeah, absolutely not.
This
always
is
good to try something new.
right. This is the year to turn those lemons into lemonade.
Exactly. There you go.
Just need a little sugar.
That.
Just need a little bit of sugar is all you need.
Some
man.
real sugar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey,
This is definitely the year to diversify.
that's my thing. You just gotta. You really gotta stay positive. It's not like birds are just gonna disappear. It's just we don't have enough water. No, ducks aren't gonna be here now. It doesn't work that way.
Not getting my license.
You're not gonna stop something that's bred into these birds to migrate. You may not be as good as one year versus the other, but yeah, just stay positive.
Yeah, for sure. And real quick, Mark, going back to Tule Lake, you know how it's sump A is pretty dry, virtually dry. That's going to be the theme next year too, right? Because they actually want to do some work in there. I think it was still a little too wet this year, although it looked dry. So it's going to be dry next year as well.
That's what I heard. It's kind of a longer term project, and they want to get in there and get as much work done as they can before they reflood it. So I'm not sure the exact timetable, but at least for the short term, it's going to be dry.
Right. So we'll take a couple losses now for some big gains later on. Hopefully,
exactly. That's the way you got to look at it. And every wetland, that we hunt out there, if it's a managed wetland, it just requires periodic, kind of revamping and dirt work. And it just, that's the way these things are managed. They get to a point where, the wetland has gone through such a successional stage that it really doesn't provide very good habitat. And if you don't go back in there and rework it, it just really becomes not a very attractive place for ducks.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
another one of those lemons into lemonade. I mean, they've talked about trying to get equipment in there for years into someday, right? But they were never going to do it themselves, lower that thing, right? Just to do it.
Right.
So this is the opportunity to do it, so we can draw some positives from a mega drought.
Yep.
Yep.
No,
so.
This is definitely long overdue. So yeah, moving then down to the Sac Valley. I mentioned, there's not going to be a lot of flooded rice on the landscape, which is a bad thing if you're one of the clubs that's not going to get flooded up. So there may be some loss of hunting opportunity there, but again, for people that do have water, that's probably going to benefit their hunting. There is some funding out there, public funding that we're working on with the Rice Commission and Ducks Unlimited that would provide some public monies for groundwater pumping. So that would help the rice guys out. But I don't think there's enough funding to really, pump up that acreage significantly. If we get, 15 to 20,000 more acres flooded, I'd be pretty happy and surprised with that. So
yeah,
but it will help some landowners that otherwise wouldn't be able to flood their rice fields.
I wonder how they decide who gets that
money.
Yeah, there'll be some criteria set up, and they definitely want to make sure that you'll have the ability then to maintain that water throughout the season, because if it doesn't rain, you got to consider that. Some of these areas, if you don't get rainfall, they're just going to end up being mud puddles. So there has to be a reasonable guarantee that they can maintain it throughout the season. And like I said, there'll be other criteria to make sure that, kind of the best areas are selected, and that we're not focusing on areas that are going to offer limited habitat.
And this is for well, there's not really any public rice. These are going to be clubs flooded.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's all for private lands. Yeah. Yep. And there's also, believe it or not, a wetland component to that too. There's about $2 million that'll be available for private duck clubs. And the details on that are still a little bit sketchy, but for duck clubs that have groundwater pumps, they'll be able to apply for funding and hopefully, get some money to help offset their costs for pumping.
Okay.
All right.
Get some subsidies there, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
It's these guys are providing habitat that doesn't just benefit ducks and geese. It's, all sorts of species benefit by it. A lot of them are under state or federal easements or some other agreement with the state or the feds to manage their property in a certain way. So I know some people complain that the duck clubs, they get all the money, but they're providing really good habitat, and we got to look at the bigger picture in terms of, what they're bringing to the table for wildlife generally. They're doing a lot of good things out there that provide significant public benefits.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. That kind of covers the Sac Valley pretty much?
Just a few more here. Sac, Delavan, Calusa, they're CVPIA refuges, so they're going to get about 75% of their normal allocation of water, the level 2 water. So their quotas should be just slightly reduced from last year. And from what we've heard, there's going to be very little rice flooded on the west side of the valley. Most of the flooded rice you'll see on the east side. So because of that, those refuges are going to be the only game in town, other than a few clubs up in the Lambertville area that'll have water. So I would expect the hunting at those refuges to be pretty good early. Typically, if you're the only water, you're going to shoot. So, yep. Of course, Sutter, the other Sac Complex refuge just always has water problems. It is supposed to be closed this year, basically until there's enough rain to get enough water in the canal so they can lift that water. into the wetlands. So at least probably through November, it'll be closed down. I wouldn't expect that to be open, if it's even going to be open, until like mid-December.
Wow. Okay, let me ask you a question. That kind of, you said Sutter, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that, and I'm just telling you from lack of knowledge of it, that doesn't even make sense to me, because when we do get water and we get flooded, guess who the first refuges is to close down? It's Sutter.
Yeah.
So how does that work both ways like that?
Yeah, it's because, Sutter's in the bypass, and you get the water coming down there, and it becomes a safety issue at some point, and they have to close it down. But it's ironic. Either it's too dry there, or it's under 10 feet of water.
Yeah.
And why can't we get more of a
like that totally threw me off when you said that. It's like,
it's
what?
at normal water levels for a long period of time, rather than having these extremes.
Yeah, Thomas drew a #1 to Sutter that year that it flooded. What was that? How many years ago was that? 4 or 5 years ago it flooded? 6 years, maybe? I thought it was like 5.
16, 17 years.
Yeah. Thomas got a #1 in late season. We're just out of our mind stoked. And like a week before our hunt, that's when the rain just started. And they're like, oh, closed. We're like, are you kidding me?
Can we parlay this for next year?
And that's what totally, I'm like bitter about that refuge now, because like now you're saying, oh, well, if it don't have water, it shuts it down. But if it has too much water, it shuts, like, what in the world?
Very small window there, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Very small window. It's crazy.
Well, years ago, you'd have that flood out, and then Fish and Game would send you a letter saying, because you had to, you were unable to use your hunt, here's a pass to go to any other refuge on that day and use it. Yeah.
Wow.
And so
that's cool.
It was great, because that was when YOLO wasn't shooting very well, and I put in over at YOLO and really didn't have any interest hunting over there at that time. But it would flood out, and you'd be able to go over a little dry creek and be basically last in line on the reservation list.
Instead of being the lottery guy, then you actually get a bump ahead of them. That's kind of cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
No,
that's too much work.
And you don't even get a refund either. So you're not getting anything out of it.
No. Just like all these deer hunters right now, all fighting to get their money back. It's like, well, now you know what us duck hunters feel like. No.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Good point.
I'm totally don't mean that.
You just donated.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you for your donation.
It was a good cause. It's a good cause.
No, yeah.
So real quick,
some
Mark.
of the other, some of the other ones, Gray Lodge, it actually did get a good shot of water from Lake Oroville in the last couple of weeks. They found some water there, so it should have a couple thousand acres flooded for the opener. So there should be a decent amount of birds over there. Upper Butte Basin, of the 3 areas there, Howard looks the best. It'll have the most water. Little Dry Creek is next, and then Llano Seco is going to have very little water. But the good thing is, I think all of those should be open for the opener. YOLO Wildlife Area looks in decent shape. It did get curtailed on some of its water, but it should have quite a few of its wetlands open and flooded for the opener. And then, the best one of all of these is Grizzly Island.
I was going to say
They're going to have a full hunter quota with all their wetlands basically flooded up.
Yeah, that's good. As big as they are, a good thing.
Yeah, and they're able to flood early too, so that the hunting over there actually may be pretty good on opening day. I mean, I normally don't go over there, but this might be a year that you want to apply for Grizzly and check it out.
Yeah, last year was a loss. They had issues over there with the water, from what I heard. And this year, it's all good.
That's good.
Yeah,
it's
good. Amazing how it changes from year to year. Yeah, you just never know.
Yeah, well, that's good. That refuge produces. It may not be the best quality of duck, but there was a lot of opportunity there. I know a lot of guys that used to shoot that and get birds.
But there are, opening week, there are mallards over there.
Yeah.
So you got to find them, but they are there.
Yeah, they're there. Yep. Well, that's good. Losing Sutter, but gaining Grizzly. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll quickly then move over to the San Joaquin Valley. Volta, Los Banos, Gadwall, and Salt Slough. Those look pretty good. I mean, they are going to have slightly reduced hunt quotas as compared to last year, but those are also CVPIA refuges, so they're in much better shape than a lot of other areas. So those might be places that you could get on via the sweat line and get some opportunity.
Mm.
China Island, it's, very small hunter quota of like 10. That's also similar to the opener for last year. So that will be open, it looks like. Mendota has about 70% of its normal water. They're going to be doing a lot of staged flooding over there. So there's probably going to be somewhat of a reduced hunter quota at Mendota. But the good thing is, with the staged flooding, as you get more later into the season, they'll have a lot more units that will open up, and hopefully the hunting will be good.
Is that just the managers that are making that call, like, okay, this is what it's going to be for today, and then we're going to add 5 more? They're the ones that kind of run that, right? The hunter quota?
Yeah, I think they have, the authority to determine exactly how they're going to flood up, and that decision is left to them. And I got to agree with that. I mean, they know their refuge better than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
They should be the ones to make the final call as to how these areas flood up and what's the best way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. San Luis and Kesterson look about similar to last year in terms of hunt quotas, and they'll be open for the opener, so that's good. Merced actually looks really good. It got decent water this year, and I think its quotas should be about the same as last year. The one that is going to be closed is down at the southern end of the valley. It's Kern National Wildlife Refuge. That's going to be closed till November, and when it reopens, it's going to be with a reduced quota. They had a really difficult time getting their water this year, so
okay,
let me unfortunate to hear.
Let me ask you something to save all of ourselves some money and our bacon. Okay, so like say right now you can go on and you can put in for your applications for all these refuges. I'm just curious, is it not going to let you put in, like if I go in right now and I go on Kern, is it not going to let you put in for October, whatever the opener weekend is? Or is it going to let you? Because you're kind of letting us know right now in advance, like, hey, if they're allowing you to do that, you're just wasting your money.
Yeah, they typically, if the refuge is not going to be open, they're not going to even give you an opportunity to put an application in. So yeah, you shouldn't be wasting your money. What you will see on the screen, if it's open, then the plan is to have that open for that hunt day. Yeah. And so you should be good.
And see, it's almost better. I mean, some guys wait to the last second, and then guys like me put it way, way early, but then not everything's available, like you just said. So it might behoove me to about 3 weeks before, so I give myself plenty of time not to miss the window, is wait till then, because I think more options would be available and you would kind of know what's going on, right? People are going to know what's going on.
I mean, I think that's a good approach. I mean, you always want the latest information too. And of course, things can happen on wildlife areas. I mean, you could have, a problem with the canal, or you could have any kind of issue that could all of a sudden drain a wetland or impact other parts of the area. So it's best to, I think, wait and see what the latest information is before making your decision. That's what I try to do as well. I think that's a good approach.
It's hard not to. I mean, like right now, you want to go in there and just do it, but you're going to have to jump on there again anyways later and fill in the voids where whatever. But yeah. Okay. Sorry.
And then, the last one real quick, Southern California, there is hunting down there, as you guys know. From what I heard, San Jacinto and Imperial Wildlife areas, they actually, have decent water this year. So their quotas should be similar to last year's opener. So that's good because, if you live in Southern California, those couple refuges and maybe Kern are like your only opportunities within a few hours drive of your house. So we got to make sure that they have opportunity down there, and at least these areas will provide that.
Very nice.
Cool. That's a lot of good information.
Yeah.
First, if you hunt in California, at least you kind of got an eye on what's going on. I mean, again, it sounds hopeful. I mean, I'm not I'm really not that stressed out about it or worried about it. Just kind of, like you said, move with the punches.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you can do, right? I mean, we're in that La Nina year.
Again,
which they say can't have more than 2 in a row. And last year was a La Nina. And I think we've talked about this before on the podcast, but I mean, as things are looking up for next year, I mean, it is what it is. It's weather. Can't control it.
Yeah.
I mean, you just got to deal with it.
some late
It
weather.
hurt.
and
I mean, it hurts when you're dealing with it, but
yeah, we'll see what happens.
yeah.
Next year could be catastrophic, guys.
Yeah, I mean we talked about about the every 6-7 year mark where we end up getting. I mean, I remember the 3 floods ago, or I say floods. I mean whatever you want to call it. Lots of water. We were kayaking down the street as kids.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we got pictures of it. We literally. So it's due. It's one of these.
Oh,
one of
yeah,
these
we're
years
due.
here
It's
soon.
just
A year or two.
Everything is extremely low now. The bar has
Yeah.
gotten even lower
I
with
know.
these reservoirs and everything else.
Yeah.
It's going to take a
Like
lot.
puddles. Some of these places we fly over, it's like, man, it's like a puddle out there.
Hey, Mark, to switch gears a little on exclusively California. What are you thinking? With these droughts we talked about nationwide, in our habitat areas in the States, Canada. What's your opinion on maybe season lengths, bag limits potentially getting reduced? Have you heard anything or some mumblings that, because we've been pretty lib for years, right? Now we're going on this mega drought and it's not just us. So, I mean, what are you projecting? I mean, this isn't concrete, but what are you thinking?
Yeah, and of course they haven't been able to do the surveys in the last 2 years, so they've had to go more off historical data to come up with our regs.
Mm-hmm.
But I would assume they're going to do, the surveys this coming year, starting next May. Hopefully they'll be able to do that. If the drought persists up there, it's certainly, possible that then at least some of the flyways could go into a moderate package rather than a liberal, and that would cut down their season length and perhaps even the bag limit. I'd have to look at, how they do it for each
flyway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the good thing is for us in the, Western Pacific Flyway, we're on the Western Mallard model, and that model, it would be so difficult for us to get kicked into a moderate framework because of the way the model was set up, that I think we're going to have liberal regulations here for quite some time.
Okay.
So even if it continues to be a very big drought in the prairies, I still think we're going to get a liberal framework here in California.
Okay. That's good
and
news.
that's all because, we go off of the Western Mallard, what they're doing, and, not only in California and Oregon, but Washington, Alaska, Alberta, areas like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of insulates us from the, droughts that are in the prairies. It's not going to affect our regulations like it would for, say, the Central Flyway and other flyways.
Yeah. Okay. So Central Mississippi, you guys are on notice.
Yeah, exactly.
Potentially,
Yeah.
Your 4 mallards might have just came down to 3, right? In the Mississippi Flyway, Arkansas, stuff like that. Potentially. I'm not going to, but.
Now, as you know, we're all, though, on a continental management plan for pintail. So, if anybody gets their regulations changed because of what pintail populations are doing, if one flyway gets that, all the other flyways are going to get that.
Yep.
So we're kind of all in that together. Unfortunately, again, that the impact is mostly on California because we winter so many of them here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of disproportionate that way, but that's the way U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service wants to approach it, that, hey, this is a continentally shared resource and we need to manage it as such.
Just with the pintails, right?
Just with the pintails, correct.
Why is that? Why is that like that?
Part of the reason is they were so prolific, even into the 1970s, that when their populations crashed, and then that was also during a drought period in the 1980s and early 90s. After we came out of that drought, other duck populations started going up, but pintail did not recover. And so because of that, the service, I think, wanted to treat them on an individual basis because they were not behaving the way other waterfowl were in terms of their response to better water conditions. Really, I mean, the root cause of their problem is changing farming practices in Canada. They just don't have the nesting stubble available to them like they had historically. So when you go out in Canada now and you see pintail nesting, it's in these very open areas.
Yeah.
They're, using their farm equipment out there. I'm sure a lot of nests are lost, but there's just not enough nesting cover for them to survive and, successfully hatch their eggs out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that being said, they didn't recover from some droughts, right? Some pretty nasty droughts. Well, we're in some right now,
Yeah.
Could not be good for the sprig outcome.
Yeah.
But we've anticipated.
At least in the short term.
In the short term, yeah.
Yeah.
I know everybody here's jonesing for some more sprig, but when you get lumped in as a whole,
right.
Very, very tough to overcome.
So on that note, we have asked the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Flyways to come up with a new model to manage pintail that hopefully will be will look at harvest as more compensatory rather than additive. And they have agreed to do that work. At their most recent flyway meetings, I should say, they announced a schedule for getting that work done. And it looks like by 2023, that new model will be in place. Now, the new model could spit out,
some
basically
bad stuff.
The same scenario that we have now, that all you're going to get is one or maybe two in good pintail production years. But they are considering the 3-bird, limit. And so hopefully at the end of the day, the model will include that as an option. We'll just have to see. But the good thing is it is on a timetable now. We, along with Delta Waterfowl and Ducks Unlimited and a couple other groups, just sent a letter to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Department of Interior requesting that they stay on that schedule, because the last thing we need to hear is, we got to delay this for another year. And then to have to tell California hunters again, you got to wait another year for this to get done. I think people would come with pitchforks and torches and probably come out of the woodwork. They'd be so pissed off. So hopefully they will stick to this schedule. And by 2023, we'll have a different set of or a different model for pintail and hopefully a different set of regulations.
Yeah, we could be hopeful.
Yeah.
Nothing may change, though.
I've heard a lot of California biologists say that too. So,
But be hopeful?
Yeah. They're really confident that that's going to be like that by then.
From what I heard, that with the early parts of the modeling they were doing, they were recognizing that harvest was not really the problem. It's more of a habitat issue. So hopefully in some way that gets built into the model. And frankly, the latest, scientific papers on pintail really do support that it's not a harvest issue, and that, frankly, you could probably raise the bag limit up to 4 or 5, and it's really not going to make a big difference on the total harvest, or at least on the population as a whole. You're not going to have significant negative effects to the population by doing that.
Right. And that's not
subjective.
It
sounds crazy.
That's objective. That's real data.
Right.
We have that support from the science, right? I'm sure.
Yeah. And the papers I've looked at, they have said it would be great if we could have like a series of experimental years where you raise the pintail limit up to 3, 4, 5, and then see what happens. Let's test this theory out, and after a 3 to 5 year period, then go back and see what the impact is on those populations. Because if you never do something like that, you'll never learn.
Never
and
know.
Sometimes you have to kind of, get outside of your normal framework, if you will, and try new things to learn more and to hopefully then develop better models that more accurately reflect what's going out on the landscape.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. We've been living the 1 and 2 bird or 1 and 2 pintail, and nothing's changed.
Yeah,
right?
true.
Yep. It's
weird how that works.
Has those regulations helped the pintail to recover? No. We definitely know that. Yep.
Wow. That's crazy. Well, I don't know I think we're kind of hitting the 50-minute mark. I mean, I think
50.
do you want to do you have anything else you want to share, or do you want to save it for next time?
The only other thing, we're working on a lot of stuff to try to increase our local mallards. As you guys know, I mean, they've been in trouble now for like the last 20 years. I mean, their populations have been declining. So, of course, one of the keys to that is fixing Klamath. And we put a lot of time and effort into that. We're also doing this delayed wheat harvest program, which has shown some good promise in terms of getting wheat farmers to delay their harvest to allow the eggs to hatch out, and letting those ducklings then get to maturity and survive rather than being churned up in the combine.
That'd be huge.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's been going on for a couple years now, right? That program?
Yep. And it showed a lot of promise. We're also working on some legislation, which I'm glad to say just hit the governor's desk. So it's gone through the legislature, which would help fund a program that we put in the Fish and Game Code several years ago called the Nesting Bird Habitat Incentive Program. And the whole focus of that program is paying farmers, duck clubs, and other landowners to maintain nest cover for specifically for mallards and pheasants. I mean, those are the two targeted species. And as you know, in addition to mallards, the pheasants have been really on a long-term decline. I mean, it's hardly, a time anymore that you can drive down the road and even see them. I mean, gosh, I got to when we do see them, I have to stop the car and show my kids because my kids have never seen a wild pheasant,
I used to see so many when I was a kid.
Remarkable thing for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I probably caught the downside of it at my age, right? You know what I mean? But yeah, even then there was tons. You could hear them all in the morning. We lived out in the country. You'd hear them every morning.
Oh yeah,
they're crowing.
Yep.
Now, Mark, speaking on that legislation.
Yep.
That's going to be something's going to be increased by $10, I think, right?
Yeah. So to pay for that, we are proposing to increase the duck stamp by $10 and the upland stamp by $10 because this would benefit both waterfowl and ground nesting upland game birds. So I know nobody wants to pay more for their licenses. We already have very high license fees.
$8 more this year.
But
it's just funny. Every year you see the jump. It's like, man.
Yeah. You compare it though to other costs for hunting. I mean, look at ammunition. It's gone through the roof. You travel, you pay a lot for that. Equipment, shotgun, vest or waders if you're duck hunting. There's so many other costs. Paying an additional $10 one time a year is not going to make or break anybody. I mean, I really don't think anybody's going to give up hunting because they're going to have to pay $10 more for that stamp.
No.
And at least the stamp is going for something that they care about and will, in the long term, improve their hunting opportunity. I personally am willing to pay a little bit more if that's going to increase my hunting opportunity for species that I covet most, right?
Well, I know a lot of people that will go buy 5 and 10 stamps just because of the fact of what it does.
Absolutely.
But it's just weird. It's funny that you talked about. So is that for sure going up?
It has to be signed by the governor. I mean, he could veto it, and it could be kaput. But we'll find out here in the next few weeks whether
he'll pass
it's
it
signed or
because
not.
anything that costs more money, they'll pass. So.
No, he might stick it to us too.
So that's a good.
I'm
That's
not
a good
helping
thing.
you.
Yeah,
no, I will not.
No, he's just gonna look at it like, oh, it costs more money for people. Yeah, let's do that. So that should pass easily, I'm sure. But no, I mean, I'm agreeing with you. I'm definitely not talking bad about that. But it is funny. Because we were just talking, I was talking to some friends the other day, like the only thing that doesn't go up is the duck stamp, and now here we are.
Yeah.
But
you
like
spoke too soon.
Yeah, it's for a good thing. But
the federal stamp went up by $10 back, I believe, in 2015, and coincidentally, that was also to support breeding waterfowl because it's going to protect primarily lands in the prairie pothole region where the duck factory is. So it's really very similar to what we're doing here. We're just trying to benefit our own local birds, which, as you guys know, are under stress right now.
Right.
There's no doubt about it.
And
go ahead.
I was going to say, and us duck hunters and anybody I think that hunts, we're great conservationists too, right? I mean, we put a ton of money back into the sport.
Yeah.
What's 10 more bucks?
Right.
Or 20, We're used to it out here.
Yeah. But
No.
you said the federal stamp though, right?
The federal stamp went up in 2015.
Right, but
yeah.
I thought that's what you were saying with this. Are you just saying the California ducks?
This will just be the California
upland.
duck stamp and the upland stamp. Both are
I
going to
thought you
go
were
up
talking
by
about the
10.
federal.
No. And I will say, when that federal duck stamp went up, the next year they looked at the data and they could not find any correlation in terms of less people hunting because of that.
No.
There was no drop in stamp sales. So at least when that was done, it did not deter people from buying their stamps.
Yeah. No, that ain't that. I don't see 100 that's going to even. They might squawk a little bit just because, but then there ain't no way they're not. Oh, I'm not hunting this year for $20 more. Like who? No one's going to do that.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Habitat's the key. I mean, that's what we need to focus on.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to base this off of data. In fact, as you guys know, we had some of our own members who wanted to change regulations and tweak that. We just think that the better way to deal with this whole mallard issue is just to get more habitat out on the ground. That's going to produce more birds for everybody to shoot. Just tinkering with the regulations is not going to solve the problem.
No, I agree. But it also, habitat is hard to come by here, Mark.
Yeah, and you have to pay a lot for it. I mean, the cost of everything here is high, and so it's not going to be cheap to do this. But we do know, when we have done these kind of nest cover projects in the past in the valley on a small scale basis, the data that we have collected from those have really shown very high nest success, much more so than you would normally see. And so as long as we target the right areas, of course, we want to have it near brood water, so those ducklings have a place to go. I think it can really help to make a difference. It's not going to be a silver bullet, but it will definitely help to address the mallard issue as a whole.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, I think we'll about to hit the hour mark. So I appreciate you again, Mark, for coming on. I meant to get you on sooner, but I've been busy and out of town. So we're glad to have you back on the podcast, and I know we'll get you on again as the season progresses and goes on. So I think a lot of good information there. I appreciate that, and appreciate what you're doing with the CWA too.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I look forward to, seeing some of your videos once we hit season here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm excited. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for listening in, and we appreciate all the support, and we'll see you next week.